Welcome to another video.
Today we're looking at the Fakeintosh Model 1 receiver. Fakeintosh was an audio brand which disappeared very quickly in the 70s after a bunch of disastrous reviews, including one in Audio Magazine where it was called the worst sounding receiver of 1979. Also, they weren't helped by their what some people referred to as brutally honest ad campaign, which people often found insulting when they read the ads in Audio Magazine. So as a result of this, the brand was pretty much disappeared, and
Cheap like you.
Only this receiver exists. Well, actually, if you haven't realized it, it's a joke.
Head, but that's a joke, boy. You missed it. Went right past you. You gotta keep on your toes.
But our parts didn't make it in time for April's Fools, and I doubt we fooled anybody with that joke. Anyway, this video would more aptly be titled, How to Build a Fake 70s Receiver. Why would we do this? Well, 1, for fun. 2, you want to try some Bluetooth in your playroom. 3, just for testing all these old tape decks. And we got all these components from AliExpress, which is like my new Radio Shack. It's a great source for cheap electronics. So to build your own audio receiver, you need to connect your sources to a switch, which then connects to a preamp, which controls tone and volume, and that preamp connects to a power amp, which is then connected to a set of stereo speakers. So let's start with the power amplifier board. At the back, you see the speaker connectors. You've got your voltage in up front and your input. A little labeling problem with this guy. If you look on the back, you'll see the manufacturer's web address, and notice the plus and minus markings on the back. The pluses are on the outside. On the front, the markings of polarity are a little bit different.
Pluses,
on the left.
This is confusing.
Yeah, so that's the amplifier. So a lot of these Chinese components don't have very clear labeling, but we can just play around with it and figure out what the right way is.
Okay.
This is the preamplifier, which controls the treble, mid-range, bass, and volume.
Yeah.
Comes with some knobs, comes with those wires, although we can just do a direct plug because the cable from the amplifier fits in here, and the cable from the switcher will fit in there too. And that the left and right seem to be reversed. Those jacks are facing opposite directions, and so the markings don't exactly match up right there either. So they may get all reversed around by the time it gets from input to output. All right, and then we have the problem guy. This is our switcher box, who simply takes 4 different inputs, and you use a little knob there, and it controls these relays, and the relays click on and off, so it switches. You know, you might have a tape deck, a CD player, whatever. One of these inputs is going to be a little tuner module. This thing was damaged quite a lot during shipping.
Here's the box.
Yeah, here's a picture of the box. It looks terrible. It looks like somebody maybe stomped on it and then threw it through a ringer. I don't know what they did to the box.
That looks like that flight had a little turbulence.
Maybe it did, yeah. It definitely came through some kind of plane, but...
Oh man, this is a nosedive.
Yeah, in this process, this wire broke loose, so I had to fix that, which was kind of difficult because it broke right at the little connector. When I ran the audio signal through it, only 2 out of the 4 inputs actually worked on both channels.
Chinese technologies these days.
Actually, the technology is fine. It's just the shipping. So I was able to fix one of the inputs. Now here I was able to break these 2 pieces apart because they're independent.
Well, maybe they went for the Bermuda Triangle during flight.
Maybe, I don't know.
And then it just shook up the box, and you're
Maybe.
like, oh, feel for the life.
Anyway, you can see here the one on the right has been bent up and damaged, and yeah, it's a mess. So I just ended up not using that. So since only 3 out of the 4 inputs actually worked, here's how this kind of jack configuration would work on a normal piece of equipment, and this is kind of the same thing, which is a pain. You know, I had to drill all these deep holes, and it's just held in place by that little screw there in the center. It does work. You know, there's enough space around that for that to go in. However, I think in the future I would probably do it more like this other jack on the other side over here, where I just drilled a hole and mounted it. Despite all the damage, the circuit appeared to work. So here we are hooking it up, just making sure it comes on. There's supposed to be 4 inputs, but only 2 of them actually worked, and I was able to fix one by soldering another wire on there. And you can see when you switch between inputs, different LEDs light up. And of course, the ones it came with are mounted all around the knob, and they're different colors. I don't want that. So I'm going to unsolder those LEDs and put in these LEDs, which are blue LEDs, so they're consistent, and they can highlight behind the window there that I've left open on the plexiglass.
Remember that stereo video?
What stereo video?
What's the green light?
Oh yeah, the Yamaha where we replaced the lights with LEDs. Well, here I'm replacing LEDs with LEDs of the same color. And there we are with all the wires. I used kind of thin, flexible wires so we could kind of mount them behind that. And finally, here's the tuner module. This was...
Do you know that tuner module can actually do TV?
Yeah, that's kind of cool. We'll go into this a little bit later in the video, but this is a tuner module that also does video. And Bluetooth and MP3 and FM tuner and...
Everything.
Yeah, it does a lot of stuff. And if you remember, we did an earlier video with the item on the back left, which was like a $3.98 Bluetooth MP3 player. This has the exact same form factor, except it does a lot more stuff, and it has a nicer remote. The one on the right was another one we tried, which was $12. It was not as good.
It did not do the video.
It didn't do video. It did more on-screen display stuff.
What about the left one? Did it do video?
No, it didn't. The one up front does video, which video wasn't the main purpose of this. It's just a nice little bonus, and I wanted to see how it handled the video too. And it also claims to handle some high-res audio files as well, so we're going to give that a try. So we could just mount all these components in a box, but we want something with a little class, a little style. So what makes a receiver like that 70s classic audio style? Well, you got to have wood, dark wood paneling. You got to have silver, kind of a metallic face, and you got to have a gratuitous light display. So let's try to add all those in the mix with these components. Wood is just plywood that we stain to make it look, give it that kind of wood feel rather than plastic feel. A good job doing the stain there.
Well, there's me painting it.
Yeah, or staining it.
Staining it.
Yeah. And then we just nailed it together, with some plywood and just hand sawed it. And here's kind of what it looks like. And then so on the inside, we're going to place all of our components that we have ordered. Although we couldn't really plan out too much in advance because the specs were a little questionable. As you see this thing in the middle, this is the power amp, which it says it's 92 millimeters wide, but the wider section is 85. Oops. So we know it's a square, so we're going to just wait and see what actually arrives. So we kind of did that, and we're waiting for the parts to arrive from AliExpress. Yeah, it takes about a month for parts to arrive.
And so I go to school.
Yes.
Then there's a fire alarm.
Yeah.
I leave school. The parts get here. Man, that was a long day.
So we're going to mount the top on the bottom by just, drilling some holes. I was going to try to use a Dremel and mount a bolt in the middle of that piece of wood. But in the end, if you just drill the holes right, it seems to hold on there, grip on the wood pretty good. So,
oh man,
you okay over there?
I'm just yawning.
Yeah, that looks pretty good. We got our wood paneling check, and it actually looks pretty nice. The other thing you need is kind of a silver look and feel to give kind of the 70s classic.
Is Fakeintosh a real thing?
No, that's it. We just made it up. Anyway, so this is a plexiglass sheet from Lowe's, and we kind of laid out, how wide the components would be. Hand cutting at the bottom looks pretty rough. The top is the edge from the factory. So how are we going to clean that up? We're going to hide it with this piece of trim left over from a house remodeling project that'll cover up that hand cut down there. So that's kind of laid out the components as best we could there. And that's what it's going to look like put all together. So I have a nice little feel there, and you'll just, And the back currently has a protective sheet on it. And anyway, if you peel off the protective sheet, we're going to spray paint the back of it. Notice we used a label at the top and some, actually those are some like cassette labels we cut to give it kind of a uniform window sort of appearance so we can have lights and things shining through. And after spray painting the back of it, the front will have a clear appearance with kind of a metal looking back to it. So you won't actually be touching the paint, you'll be touching clear plexiglass. We're seeing that through the front of the thing. Finally, the thing you need on a 70s receiver is a gratuitous light display. So we used our Dremel and dremeled out our brand name here of Fakeintosh. And at this point, probably really need some sort of computer-generated, thing.
Laser pointer.
Yeah, and then we just taped some sort of laser cutter. But this looks pretty decent. We built a little sign we're going to prop up behind there and taped a LED on there, and it lights up pretty well. And for the back, nobody's going to see the back, so we just took some old boards left over from repairing our screened-in porch and put some clamps on that and cut it so it's the right height, and we're just going to drill all the connectors in there. When we started mounting the components inside, I used motherboard standoffs, which grip the wood pretty well and hold the little boards pretty securely so they're not just sitting on wood. So here it is all put together, or I should say mostly put together. We're still missing one piece. That little piece of paper you see on the left is a down converter. All these components, except for this tuner board right here, run 12 volts, but it actually needs 5 volts, which will be provided by that 12 volt to 5 volt converter that hasn't arrived in the mail yet. So for now, to get around that, I just ran this extra little micro USB charger in there to provide the 5 volts, but it'll eventually be tapped in that terminal strip, that little regulator item. There are the LEDs down there, which when I switch the input switcher, you see they move, they shine through the front panel. Also, there are a couple little wooden standoffs on the left side and the right side to kind of just press a little bit more on the plexiglass to get a little bit more firm support up front. So here's what the back looks like. I'm going to label everything and get rid of that white wire eventually, but not much to say about it. It will not be visible most of the time. There's our composite video output. Let's power it up and see what happens. This MP3 player has a home screen. You got music mode, movie mode, photo mode, Explorer, which lets you browse files, FM tuner mode, auxiliary input, Bluetooth, and settings. Now when you go into settings, it comes in Chinese mode and you have to flip this little switch to make it go over to English. You've also got a product info, which I think will give you like the amount of space free on your card and the firmware version, and it'll work with NTSC or PAL, which of course PAL will fool my TV a little bit, but you could also just hit mode and cycle through the various modes, and it'll show a graphic on the screen as well as some sort of indicator on the LED. Now the video is interesting. We'll go back to that. Here's what the audio looks like. You see a list of the files. It's not ID3 tags, it's actually file names. And then you see the graph there. Here's the video. This is widescreen video file that's being sent out in like 4:3 format, and then the TV is expanding it back out. So it's not really playing it over an HDMI output, it's playing over a composite output, and you stretch it with the TV to make it look right. But on a small TV like this is probably a 19-inch TV. You know, for casual viewing, it's probably okay. I wouldn't want to watch anything, you know, serious on this. It does handle fast forward pretty well. You just hold down the right button for a couple of seconds and it'll fast forward very rapidly through the file. I think this is probably, I don't know how big this file is. This might be about a gigabyte MKV file. And then when you release the fast forward button, it takes a second or two and catches up.
We set up a thing in my playroom.
Yeah, if you remember from our earlier video, you're currently using the AV900 and the CD player. You got a lot of Legos and you need a little bit more space to play, so we're going to eliminate those and put in the new Fakeintosh receiver there and see how it works. And you've been using this for a while. What do you think so far?
I like it.
You like it? Well, good. So let's give it a try. First, here's the video.
Twister.
These are old Zenith Allegro 1000 speakers, and they make a pretty decent amount of noise.
Bluetooth.
Now you've got an old phone of ours that you use for just Wi-Fi, and so we're able to connect that to Bluetooth, and then you can play YouTube videos on this. And I think you hook up one of your video games here, and you can hear the sound from your video game coming out over these speakers, which is kind of interesting.
Watch.
Oh wait, this is an airplane crash simulation game or something?
Prepare for impact game.
With an overheating engine failure, wear the oxygen mask and prepare for crash landing.
Okay, so now that you've been using it a couple days, what do you think about it?
It's good.
What's your favorite part?
The video.
You like the video? Yeah, it seems to play VOB files or MKV files, like the Three Stooges. Yeah, there was no manual, so let's talk about some of the weird bugs and features with this thing.
It usually switches back to Chinese mode.
Yeah, it switches to Chinese mode occasionally. There's a button on the remote that lets you send out left, right, or stereo, which is a weird function to have on a remote, like an LR button. So like if you only want to listen to half the sound. There's some strange things on the user interface. There's a delete function in there for some reason. I'm not sure why. If you scroll up and down, sometimes the fonts don't exactly match up there. You can see it's a little bit off-centered. There's an equalizer built in that only applies to the MP3 files you can get to in the menu. And then the repeat stuff, I guess they really want you to know what repeat mode you're in, because it's got the word at the bottom and that symbol, which is also displayed up top. So there's kind of a double entry for that. And then even if you don't have the TV or video output on, you can also see some indication of that on the front panel, where as you cycle through the various modes. And then the FM tuner, there's a menu at the bottom of that lets you get this list of preset stations. And it always comes back on, I think, on the first preset, but I haven't figured out how to manually set the first preset. If you go into auto mode, it'll just kind of cycle through all the presets. I can make it flash green. If you go through auto mode, it'll cycle through all the stations one by one and assign them to a preset, and then it'll come up when you power it up with the first preset. But I hadn't quite figured out how to manually save a preset yet. That's about it. Anything else you want to say?
See you next time for another video.
Bye-bye.